In 1960, the median home was about $11,900, around $129,000 in today's money. Now, the median new home sits closer to $420,000. Back then, one breadwinner could often cover the mortgage. Today, it can take two steady incomes just to make the monthly payment, even before you add in insurance, property taxes, and the fix-it list. The median household income in 1960 was about $5,600, roughly $60,800 adjusted for today. Now it's closer to $80,000. Sure, the number's bigger, but housing, healthcare, and higher education have all taken a much larger bite. Back then, a single paycheck could often keep a family comfortable. Today, the math feels a little tighter for many folks. Gas was about 31 cents a gallon in 1960, which works out to roughly $3.37 today. Funny enough, that's a hair more expensive than the $3.16 average now. But back then, the price came with a windshield wipe, oil check, and a smile from the station attendant. Today, you pump it yourself and hope the receipt prints. A movie ticket in the early 60s could be had for under $1, 86 cents in 1963, about $8.90 today. Now, depending on the theater, you'll pay $12 to $16 before popcorn, and that's just for a regular seat. In the 60s, you got the big screen, maybe a cartoon short, and sometimes even a double feature. In 1960, a first-class stamp cost 4 cents, about 43 cents in today's money. Now it's 78 cents. And while letters were the lifeline for news, romance, and family updates back then, today they're mostly bills, wedding invitations, and the occasional holiday card. The mailbox has lost a little of its magic. The average new car in 1960 ran about $2,600, roughly $28,000 in today's dollars. Now, the average price is closer to $49,000. Those older cars didn't have heated seats, cameras, or Bluetooth, but they had style, chrome bumpers, bold colors, and plenty of personality. And you could fix most problems yourself with a socket set and some patience. The federal minimum wage in the early 60s was $1 to $1.25, about $10.86 to $13.58 today when adjusted for inflation. Now, the federal rate is $7.25, though many states set it higher. Back then, a teenager could work a summer and have enough for school clothes, gas, and maybe even a used car. Today, not quite. In 1960, the top federal income tax rate was a whopping 91%, but it only applied to the highest incomes, over $200,000 then, about $2.1 million today. Most middle-class families in the mid-60s paid around 15 to 18% after deductions. Even upper-middle earners usually landed in the low 20% range. The corporate tax rate in the 60s topped out around 52%, compared to a flat 21% today. Big companies then shouldered more of the tax burden on paper, though plenty of loopholes kept accountants busy. Smaller local businesses often operated on handshakes and community ties, far from the multinational scale that dominates today's economy. In 1960, the average household had about 3.29 people. Today, it's closer to 2.5. More space per person sounds nice, but it also means fewer built-in playmates for kids, and fewer hands around the table at dinner. Back then, you could fill a car with family and still have a cousin or two riding in the back. One TV, 3 channels, and rabbit ear antennas. That was the 1960 living room. Shows came on when they came on, and you either caught them or missed them. Now, you've got hundreds of channels and endless streaming options. Funny thing is, people still say the same thing. There's nothing to watch. School cafeterias in the 60s served meals cooked on site. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, fresh rolls. You could smell lunch down the hallway by mid-morning. Today, many schools reheat prepackaged meals or outsource entirely. There's efficiency in that, sure, but it's hard to beat the taste of something that came out of an oven just steps from your desk. Music came on vinyl records and from radio countdowns. You'd wait all week to hear your favorite song crack the top 10. Now, any track is a voice command away, with algorithms deciding what you might like next. Convenience has its perks, but so did the thrill of catching a song live over the airwaves. Woodstock in '69. Hundreds of thousands gathered in the mud for music and a message. Tickets were $18 in advance, about $150 today, for 3 days. Now, big festivals come with wristbands, VIP sections, and charging stations for your phone. The spirit's still there, but the logistics feel a little more corporate than communal. Flying in the 60s was something you dressed up for. Men wore suits, women wore dresses, and meal service was standard, even in coach. Today, it's athleisure, baggage fees, and Wi-Fi at 30,000 feet. The miracle of flight is still there, but the romance of the experience has been trimmed back for efficiency. Smoking was everywhere in the 60s, offices, airplanes, restaurants. Now it's banned in most public indoor spaces, replaced in part by vaping. For better health, the change is a win. But there was a time when the haze of cigarette smoke was as much a part of the atmosphere as the music or conversation. The space race was family viewing. Mercury and Apollo launches stopped people in their tracks, with neighbors gathered around black and white TVs. Today, rockets still go up, some even landing back on their pads. But many folks just watch the highlights later on their phones. The wonder's still there. It just has more competition for attention. Cars in the 60s had metal dashboards, no airbags, and big steering wheels. Today's rides have crumple zones, airbags all around, cameras, and lane-keeping systems. Safety's better now, no question, but there's a certain nostalgic charm to those old, heavy doors and the smell of a vinyl bench seat on a summer day. Hot dogs at the 5 and dime counter were a quick lunch for pocket change. You'd sit on a stool, watch them get grilled, and maybe add a soda for another nickel. Now, fast food means drive-thrus, combo meals, and touch screens. It's faster, but it's not quite the same as hearing the sizzle in front of you. In the 60s, you bought concert tickets at the box office or a record store, cash in hand. Today, it's online sales with service fees, digital queues, and resale markups. The music's still live, but the hunt for tickets used to be an event in itself, with friends lining up together before sunrise. Neighborhood barbers and beauty parlors were corner institutions. Everyone knew your name, your style, and probably your kids' names, too. Today, it's salon suites, booking apps, and stylists who may not be in the same place next year. You can still get a good cut, but the community connection isn't as baked in as it was. A Route 66 road trip meant 2-lane highways, neon motel signs, and diners with jukeboxes at every table. Families crossed half the country without an itinerary, just following the road. Now, the interstates get you there faster, but you pass the same chain hotels and restaurants you'd find anywhere else in the country. Summer jobs for teens were easy to find. Mowing lawns, bagging groceries, flipping burgers. You'd walk in, ask for the boss, and start that week. Today, many require online applications, background checks, and weeks of waiting. There's more process now, but less of that old, you're hired kid moment that felt so good. In the 1960s, a year at a public 4-year college cost under $1,500, around $11,000 today. Now, the average is about $28,000. Back then, a summer job could cover a big chunk of tuition. Today, loans are the norm, and many graduates start their careers with a monthly payment bigger than their rent. Job hunting in the 60s meant flipping through newspaper classifieds, circling ads, and pounding the pavement in your best suit. You meet someone face to face and maybe walk out with a start date. Now, it's applicant tracking systems, keyword scanning, and video interviews. Efficient? Yes. But you can't shake hands with a computer. Banking meant walking into a branch, updating your little passbook, and knowing the tellers by name. Banks shut their doors by 3 p.m. Friday, so you planned ahead. Today, it's all in your pocket. Mobile apps, instant transfers, and 24/7 access. Convenient, sure, but you don't get that small-town wave from the bank manager anymore. In the 60s, you could leave the house all day without a thought about power. No charges, no outlets to hunt for, no battery percentage in the corner of your vision. Today, a dying phone can feel like an emergency, with backup batteries, cords, and frantic outlet searches as part of the daily routine. Grocery stores followed the seasons back then. Strawberries were a summer treat, and winter meant root vegetables and canned goods. Now, you can buy blueberries in January and avocados year-round, thanks to global supply chains. It's convenient, but it's hard to get that same thrill of the first fresh peach of the season. Milk came in heavy glass bottles left on your porch, cream rising to the top in a thick, rich layer. You'd give the empties back to the milkman for reuse. Today, it's paper cartons, plastic jugs, and plant-based alternatives, all with nutrition labels and expiration dates. But none of that satisfying clink of bottles at the doorstep. Dinner was one meal, one table, and everyone present. Maybe the evening news murmuring from a single TV in the corner. Now, it's food delivery on different schedules, dietary preferences to juggle, and separate screens at the table. The food might be fancier, but the togetherness is harder to pin down. Sunday was for church, family visits, and maybe a roast in the oven. Streets were quieter, stores closed, and the world seemed to slow down. Today, Sundays compete with live-streamed services, packed youth sports schedules, and catching up on errands. The day still holds meaning, but it rarely feels like a pause anymore. Police and fire calls went through a switchboard operator who might even know your family. Response times depended on a quick voice and a map on the wall. Now, it's GPS-tracked units, body cams, and computer-aided dispatch systems, efficient and high-tech, but without the neighborly voice on the other end. If you wanted to learn the latest dance, you tuned into American Bandstand and copied what you saw, maybe practicing in the living room until you got it right. Today, new moves are learned from viral videos, shared instantly across the world. The reach is bigger now, but the ritual felt more special back then. Sunday drives had no set destination, just piling in the car and seeing where the road took you. Maybe you found a new diner or a quiet fishing spot. No GPS, no ETA, just curiosity. Today, every trip is planned, mapped, and tracked. You still get there, but the surprise is often missing. When the high school football team played, the whole town came out. Bleachers packed, band playing, concession stand humming. It was as much about seeing neighbors as it was about the game. Now, with endless entertainment options, crowds are smaller, and the Friday night lights don't shine quite as bright. Work clothes in the 60s meant pressed suits, ties, and polished shoes for men, dresses, stockings, and heels for women. Today, office attire might be a hoodie on Zoom or sneakers with slacks. Comfortable, yes, but walking into a room where everyone looked sharp had its own kind of energy. It wasn't unusual for one parent to stay home, often the mother, while the other worked. Child care was built into the household, and kids came home to someone waiting. Now, dual-income households are the norm, and child care costs can rival a mortgage. The pace is faster, but so is the strain on families. Hometown parades brought marching bands, floats, and candy tossed to kids along Main Street. Businesses decorated, the fire trucks rolled, and the whole town turned out. Today, some towns still manage it, but many can't keep the tradition alive, squeezed out by budgets and busier calendars. Discipline at school was firm, sometimes with a paddle and always with a call home if you stepped out of line. Today, schools rely on counseling teams, restorative practices, and behavior plans. The approaches have changed, but for better or worse, the fear of the principal's office isn't quite what it used to be. Farmers' markets sold fresh goods from nearby fields. No organic labels or certifications, just the farmer telling you it was picked that morning. Now, organic is a selling point, and some produce travels farther than you do on vacation. The food's still good, but the handshake deal is harder to find. Local papers covered school plays, city meetings, and who won the pie contest. You'd read about people you actually knew. Now, community news is often buried under social feeds, newsletters, and algorithm-chosen headlines. It's faster now, but it rarely feels as personal. Political news arrived with the morning paper or the evening broadcast, giving you time to digest it before the next update. Now, news breaks in seconds and trends online within minutes. You're more informed, but the churn can make it exhausting to keep up. Friday nights in the school gym meant teen dances with live local bands, chaperones leaning on the walls, and friends daring each other onto the floor. You could smell punch and floor wax in the air. Now, teens connect through group chats, gaming, and TikTok trends. The music's still there, but the sweaty, nervous magic isn't. Little league games, church picnics, and town fairs brought neighbors together regularly. Everyone showed up, and everyone knew someone on the field. Now, activities are more specialized and scattered, with families driving hours for tournaments instead of walking to the local park. If something broke, you fixed it, in your garage, at the kitchen table, or with help from a neighbor. Now, you might need special tools, proprietary parts, or a repair shop just to open it up. The internet has tutorials, sure, but it's not quite the same as figuring it out with your own hands. Kids' bikes were everywhere, piled in front yards or leaning on fences as packs of kids roamed the neighborhood. Today, you see fewer bikes and more kids inside on screens. The laughter's still there. It's just coming through headsets instead of drifting in from the street. Small appliances, toasters, radios, fans, were built to be repaired. A broken cord or motor meant a trip to the repair shop, not the trash. Today, replacing often costs less than fixing, and fewer things are made to last. Pharmacists mixed medicines by hand, measuring powders and liquids in the back of the store. They knew their customers and might even make a special blend just for you. Now, most prescriptions are filled by automated machines, efficient but impersonal. Chain restaurants were rare. Most towns had local diners and family-owned spots where the menu barely changed. Today, franchises dominate, and a burger in Ohio tastes just like one in Arizona. Reliable, yes, but that hometown flavor is harder to find. Downtown department stores were the anchor of shopping, with window displays that stopped you in your tracks. You'd ride the escalator just for fun. Now, much of that has moved online, with packages arriving on porches instead of memories made in bustling aisles. Back then, you could stroll into a factory, power plant, or even a TV studio just by asking politely at the door. Workers showed you the machines, maybe slipped you a free sample. Today, security checkpoints and liability waivers keep most doors shut tight. Safer, sure, but the thrill of wandering behind the scenes is gone. Trains still hummed between cities in the 60s with polished dining cars and porters in pressed uniforms. You could read, nap, or just watch the countryside roll by. Today, most people drive or fly, with long-distance rail a rare choice. It still exists, but that golden age of train travel is a memory. Sports fans once caught games over the radio or on a single TV broadcast each week. The voices of certain announcers became legends because they were the only ones calling the plays. Today, every game streams in high definition with multiple angles and endless replays. Impressive, but the shared anticipation isn't quite the same. Report cards came home in manila envelopes, carried nervously in school bags. Parents learned your grades at the kitchen table, maybe after a deep breath. Once or twice a year, they'd meet teachers in person. Now, grades appear instantly on portals. Pings arrive for missing homework, and surprises, good or bad, are rare. For young men in the late 60s, the draft board's letter could change everything. Vietnam loomed large, shaping futures overnight. Families counted the days and held their breath. Today's all-volunteer force serves without that shadow hanging over every household. News comes fast now, but not with that same personal, life-altering weight. Amateur ham radio operators once spun dials to catch voices from across the globe, trading call signs and stories with strangers turned friends. You never knew who might answer. Now, instant messaging and video calls connect the world more quickly, but without that spark of discovery when a voice crackled in from thousands of miles away. Local radio DJs were hometown stars, their voices as familiar as family. They took requests, plugged community events, and made each show feel personal. Today, playlists are algorithm-built, polished, but impersonal, and the voice on the air might not even be in your state. The music's still good, but the personality is missing. Office desks held clattering typewriters, stacks of carbon paper, and bottles of whiteout. Mistakes were permanent unless you patched them with liquid patience. Now, documents save automatically, spell check fixes typos, and AI offers rewrites. It's easier, cleaner, but that tap-tap-ding rhythm is a sound from another life. Records were kept in rows of heavy filing cabinets, each folder labeled by hand and thumbed through daily. It was slow, but you could find what you needed with a little patience and a lot of paper cuts. Today, cloud drives store everything, searchable in seconds. Practical, yes, but less tangible. Photo albums sat proudly on coffee tables, their pages heavy with real prints and handwritten captions. Visitors flipped through them like storybooks, laughing at old hairstyles and family trips. Today, photos live on phones and are swiped past in seconds. They're easier to share, but harder to cherish. Travel meant a stop at the local travel agency, where glossy brochures promised sun-drenched beaches or winding mountain roads. Paper tickets tucked in an envelope were part of the excitement. Now, it's price alerts and mobile boarding passes. Music filled rooms from record players and hi-fi consoles, the warm crackle of a needle on vinyl making it feel alive. Albums were played start to finish, cover art admired like museum pieces. Today's streaming delivers crystal clear sound instantly, but without the ritual of lowering the needle and letting a side play through. Grocery baggers carefully loaded your paper sacks and carried them right to your car, sometimes even refusing a tip. Today, most shoppers bag their own, and in many places, pay for the bag. It's faster, perhaps, but you miss the friendly chat on the walk to the parking lot. After-school hours were filled with Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, and bowling leagues, activities that built friendships and kept kids busy in person. Now, it's esports teams, climbing gyms, and virtual meetups. The skills are different, but there's less of that hometown sense of belonging. Civic clubs, lodges, and fraternal organizations once packed their halls for dinners, dances, and charity drives. Joining was part of adult life. Now, online communities connect people with shared interests. But without the handshakes, name tags, and coffee in church basements that made connections feel solid. Downtown diners and soda fountains offered stools at the counter, milkshakes in tall glasses, and servers who knew your usual. Now, food halls and fusion trucks serve up bold flavors from around the world. Exciting, yes, but without the comfort of walking in and being greeted by name. Teachers wheeled in projectors or flipped through film strips, the hum of the machine filling the room as students watched images click past. Now, classrooms have interactive boards, apps, and streaming videos. The lessons might be sharper, but the charm of a dusty film reel is hard to match. Neighbors used to just drop by. No texts, no invites. They rang the bell with a pie or a story to tell. Today, an unannounced knock can send people ducking behind curtains. Life's more scheduled now, but it's missing that casual doorbell friendship. Fridays meant paychecks in envelopes, crisp bills ready for the weekend, workers lined up at the bank before closing time, maybe pocketing cash for a night out. Now, direct deposits land quietly, and same-day pay cards keep things moving. It's more convenient, but less of a milestone. Men tipped their hats, doors were held open, and sir or ma'am was standard. Politeness had a formality to it. Now, first names and emojis often take the place of formal address. It's friendly, but it doesn't carry that same air of respect. Road trips relied on folded paper maps spread across the dashboard while someone pointed the way. You learned the geography along with the route. Today, GPS gives step-by-step instructions right down to your ETA. It's harder to get lost, but also harder to stumble on something wonderful. Architects and engineers sketched at drafting tables with slide rules in hand, every line and measurement deliberate. Now, CAD programs do the math in seconds and model entire buildings in 3D. The work is faster, but the craft once poured into each stroke is a fading art. Lawns stayed neutral. No yard signs in sight unless there was a bake sale or missing dog. You didn't know your neighbor's politics unless it came up over coffee. Today, front yards can be miniature billboards, broadcasting every cause or candidate. The quiet was simpler. Corner cobblers repaired your shoes, and TV repair shops kept sets running for years. People knew the repairman by name. Today, big box stores handle returns and replacements, and refurb programs ship your item to a warehouse. The fix is faster, but the relationship is gone. Soda came in the glass bottles you returned for a few cents back. You'd clink them together in a paper bag, drop them off at the corner store, and maybe use the deposit money for candy. Now it's plastic bottles, aluminum cans, and recycling bins. Easier, sure, but that little return trip ritual is gone. In the 60s, you could fix most car troubles with a socket set, a jack, and a bit of determination. Parts were cheap, engines were simple, and a neighbor might lend a hand. Now, even oil changes can mean computer resets and specialty tools. Cars are smarter, but the driveway mechanic is a dying breed. Public libraries used to be bustling, quiet only in the reading rooms, but alive with neighbors browsing shelves, kids curled up with picture books, and the scent of paper everywhere. Today, many fight for funding and visitors. The e-books are handy, but it's hard to beat the creak of a library chair on a rainy afternoon. A neighborhood watch once meant exactly that. Neighbors watching. Folks knew who belonged, who didn't, and kept an eye out from porches. Now it's motion lights, doorbell cams, and community apps sending alerts. Safer, maybe, but less personal. Back then, the system was just people who cared enough to notice. One phone per house, fixed to the wall, and in some places, party lines that neighbors could listen in on. If someone else was talking, you waited your turn. Now everyone carries a personal number in their pocket. Convenient? Sure. But no one's going to overhear old Mrs. Miller's gossip by accident anymore. Catalog shopping meant the thick Sears book on the coffee table, pages dog-eared for Christmas wishes or summer plans. You'd order by mail and wait weeks. Now it's 2-day shipping, free returns, and instant tracking. Faster, yes. But paging through those glossy dreams was half the fun. Big families were the norm. 4, 5, even more kids tumbling through the house, hand-me-down clothes and shared bedrooms, just part of life. Now, later marriages and smaller families are more common. Homes are quieter, neater, but they don't echo with the same happy chaos. Comic books sat in wire racks at drugstores, bright covers calling for a dime or less. You read them until the staples gave out, then traded with friends. Now, they're collectors' items behind glass, priced for investors, not kids on bikes. The heroes still save the day, but the comics don't live in your back pocket anymore. A road trip meant pulling into a national park, parking where you liked, and exploring without reservations. Campsites were first come, first served. Now, many parks require timed entry passes, booked months in advance. It keeps the crowds down, but it's a far cry from just rolling in to see what you find. Weather forecasts came from the evening news or a glance at the sky. You listened for the local weatherman's voice, half science and half charm. Now, radar and alerts ping your phone with minute-by-minute updates. More accurate, yes. But you don't plan the day by looking out the kitchen window anymore. Snow days were magical surprises. You woke to silence, peeked outside, and saw the world covered in white. No school, no work, just sledding and cocoa. Now, many schools flip to remote learning. The day's still there, but it feels more like homework in a sweater. Most jobs were in offices or factories. You could see what people made, touch the finished product, and clock out with a sense of completion. Now, services and knowledge work dominate. The paychecks still cash, but the results often live on screens instead of in your hands. Payphones waited on street corners and in diner booths, always ready for a coin and a call. You carried change just in case. Now everything's QR codes, mobile pay, and pocket-sized cell towers. Handy, yes, but no one's ducking into a booth to call home anymore. Hardware stores had creaky wooden floors, bins of nails you could scoop by the pound, and clerks who could find the exact bolt you needed from memory. Now it's miles of warehouse aisles and self-checkout. You get what you need, but not always the advice that comes with it. Civics classes walked students through the Constitution, while current events quizzes kept them sharp. Teachers expected you to read the paper and know the headlines. Now, media literacy lessons focus on spotting misinformation and bias. The goals still inform citizens, just in a noisier, more tangled news world. Teen drivers learned on stick-shift cars, grinding gears until muscle memory kicked in. It was a rite of passage, a skill you kept for life. Now, most kids learn on automatics with driver assist features, and some never touch a clutch. The freedom's still there, just with fewer moving parts. House keys often sat under the doormat or on a nail in the garage, and no one thought much of it. Now, homes bristle with motion lights, smart locks, and security cameras. It's safer, maybe, but trust doesn't get left on the porch anymore. Backyard grills ran on charcoal, filling the neighborhood with that smoky, unmistakable smell. Lighting it took patience, and cooking took time. Now pellet smokers and infrared burners bring precision and speed. The food might be better, but the ritual of coaxing coals to life is fading. At the end of the 60s, malls were the new wonder, climate-controlled shopping streets with fountains and food courts. Families went just to stroll. Now many are repurposed as lifestyle centers, warehouses, or left empty. The indoor mall buzz is something you can't quite replicate. In the summer of love, 1967, thousands poured into San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury, chasing music, art, and a new way of living. It was real, physical, and unforgettable. Today, going viral is mostly a matter of pixels. A trending post instead of a street full of flowers and guitars. Birthday parties were cake, backyard games, and maybe a few balloons. You'd pin the tail on the donkey until someone laughed too hard to see straight. Now, there are themed events at rented venues with photo booths and goodie bags. Fun, sure, but a lot less about just being together. Vacations meant sending postcards, a quick note scrawled in ballpoint, a picture on the front, and a stamp licked in the hotel lobby. They took days to arrive, but that was part of the charm. Now, vacation photos hit social media before your sunscreen dries. Supermarkets closed by 6 p.m., and Sundays were even shorter hours. If you forgot something, you waited until Monday. Now, many are open late or even 24 hours. It's convenient, but those early closings made weekends feel slower and more deliberate. Detroit's big three automakers dominated the road in the 60s, and most cars on Main Street were American-made. Today, the industry's global, parts from one country, assembly in another, and a push toward electric vehicles. Cars are more advanced now, but the pride of Made in USA was everywhere back then. Evenings once meant gathering around the radio for dramas, variety hours, and ball games called in crackly tones. You pictured the scenes in your head, every voice as vivid as a movie. Now, podcasts and smart speakers bring endless choices, but the magic of an entire family leaning in toward one glowing dial feels harder to recapture. Life simply moved at a different pace. Fewer choices, fewer interruptions, and fewer glowing screens pulling at you. Days had more pauses built in, whether you wanted them or not. Today is faster, noisier, and always on. Some call that progress. Others just miss the quiet.